Hi, everybody. I'm Tamara Zoner.
And I'm John Davis.
Welcome to Spirit Cafe.
Come in, sit down, and
grab a cup of love.
A Spirituality Without the Guilt podcast. Hey guys, it's John Davis, and I'm here with my lovely co-host Tamara Zoner as usual. And today is a very special day. Today we're going to have our very first guest. This is so exciting. I'm really thrilled. Good morning to you, Tamara. How are you today?
Good morning, John Davis. I am fine and super excited about our first guest. So yay, I'm a bit giddy this morning.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm really. When you first told me about her, I went online and I cyber stalked her for a little while.
As you do,
as I do, because I believe in getting my information, and I know all kinds of crazy things about her. No, I'm only kidding. So why don't since she is a very good friend of yours, why don't you tell us a little bit about her and introduce her?
All right. Well, this morning we are talking with Claire Rad, who I met a whole bunch of years ago in Singapore when we both were living there. And it's been really fun to watch Claire grow in her unique talents and abilities, which I'll let her tell us about in a few minutes. But she is this beautiful, peaceful, calm, loving energy. And it's been such a fun path watching her explore her abilities and develop them and be able to be, practiced on and be a part of that and to really watch it grow from the inside and the outside, but the inside is. So it's very cool. Claire's a very special woman and I'm super excited she's our first guest. So Claire, would you please tell us a little bit about you?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, John and Tamara, for having me here in the Spirit Cafe. I'm delighted to be here and share my story, which I think will give people maybe some hope if they think that they don't have skills or special abilities, because I'm a very late bloomer in that department. So I discovered my psychic abilities basically when I was in my 40s. And so I've had a varied life up till then, but now my life has completely changed since learning about that.
Well, until your 40s, that's a pretty interesting time to actually to discover something like that. Was that a mental struggle for you? Because I know for me as a recovered Catholic or recovering, depending upon the day, as Tamara and I always talk about.
Right.
I had a real struggle with the idea of psychic and all that. And now I'm like wide open to all of it. But did you have a struggle with that?
No, not at all. I was flabbergasted. I was the type of person that grew up, watching mediums on TV, for example, and just sitting there in awe, crying when everyone was crying on the show, and thinking that's such an amazing thing to be able to do, and believing strongly that you have to be born with that talent or that gift. And now I realize that we're all born psychic, and we just aren't encouraged, particularly in the Western world. We're not encouraged to use it. And in fact, I think it's preferred if we don't use it because it's way too powerful and wonderful. And so it certainly opened the door to a much happier, more open-hearted life for me. So I welcomed it. Yeah.
So how did you come to realize that you had these gifts, or did you just decide you wanted to explore whether or not you did?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, it took me by surprise. So I'd been, when I was living in Singapore, I'd been to a life coach who'd, with her guidance, I'd become a published author. I'd become lead in the Stage Club's pantomime, British pantomime, Aladdin. I'd had all these dreams realized through working with a life coach. So when I moved to Houston a few years later, I thought, you know what, I'm attempting to write a chick lit novel. I'm not really focusing properly on it. I'm not quite sure where to take it. I'll go and get a life coach and, make it happen. That was the theory. But what I didn't realize was the lady that I booked, and I know it was all meant to be, had a very spiritual side to her. So while we were talking schedules and priorities and this and that, she then suddenly one day while we were sitting there said, "Hey, I can see your spirit guides beside you." And I was literally looking over my shoulders going, sorry, what? I hadn't even heard the term before. I didn't know what she was going on about. And so she started talking about it. And as I sat there, I was, you know, part of me was dubious, and I just thought, you know, how is this making me feel? And I realized that it felt very comforting and I was interested. And she said, ultimately, if you would like to communicate with your spirit guides, it is possible, you know, if you're willing to try. And so she basically told me to, or suggested that I meditate. And so I learned to meditate and I learned to connect with my spirit guides. And it was so comforting and it was a lot of fun. And then while I was doing that, I thought, you know what, I was in the zone. I was feeling very connected. And I said, if there's anyone else out there, I'm listening. And somebody replied.
Oh, wow.
So I heard the start of a poem, "Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright." And I was basically lying in my walk-in closet in the dark going, oh my gosh, is this really happening? And then this person said, "Tell my family I'm okay." And so I said, well, who's your family? And he said, Tony. And then he paused and he said, Sheffield. Now, Sheffield's a city in England. And I thought, the spirit thought, because I'm British, that maybe he thought I was in England. So I said, oh, you're going to have to talk to someone else, not knowing quite how this all worked. And as soon as I said that, it was like, you know, the telephone receiver went down, the line was cut, he was gone. And I realized that change in energy was so dramatic that, wow, that really did happen. Yeah. So that was the start of it. And then I've had years and years of trainings and books and development circles, and that's led me to where I am now.
There's a couple of things I want to unpack in there. And one of those is you said that you had to tap into your feelings, because I truly believe feeling is the communication of spirit. I believe that we communicate with spirit through how we feel. And, you know, words are so limiting and thoughts can be limiting depending upon our own subconscious beliefs. But I believe the idea of how it makes us feel. Now, the idea of getting a name like that to me is not in any way, shape, or form foreign to me. And I also was one of those ones who had it kind of thrust upon him in a lot of ways. And just to share a quick story with you, I was talking to a guy one night, and all of a sudden I got a name pop into my head while I was talking to him. And I said, do you know someone named Dolores Mancini? And he's like, no. I said, Dolores Mancini. He says, well, I know David Mancini. I said, no, this is a woman and her name is Dolores Mancini. He says, oh my God, it's his mom. We call her Dolly. Oh. Well, and what was interesting was this guy was right in front of me and I had this name. So that was like a total tag for him. And then the words that came through for him were, tell her that she needs to let her brother go, because since his death, she's been telling everyone that she had a broken heart and it's manifesting into a physical heart condition. And so to me, that was, you know, I had things like that happen to me a lot. I had weird things. Tamara will tell you, I had a lot of weird things happen in my life.
Many.
But and with the same guy, I don't know whether this guy and I had a connection or what, because I also brought through the name Anthony Barbagella, which was an interesting name. Yeah. And he said, he says it was definitely it was Anthony, not Anthony. He says, because we always called him Anthony. But yeah, so I brought it through stuff for him too. But the interesting thing to me is when the information came through, it came through very specifically, like it did for you. Do you find the more you believe in what's coming through, the clearer your information becomes?
Yeah, I think it's vital. You have to trust it. If you don't trust it, it's disrespectful, number one. And when you trust, you let go of the judgment that impedes it. So you're just letting it flow. Yeah, right. So it's necessary to, and you know, a lot of the training was building that belief. Yes, this really is possible. Yes, this is happening. Because it's easy to say, am I making this up? Especially for me, when a lot of the voices and messages that come through, it sounds like my voice, but it's not my words.
Right.
And so it can be harder to say, is that really from spirit? But obviously with lots of practice, you get used to it and you build up your trust. And then with having lots of validation, you find yourself in a position where you just believe and it flows, and you communicate it to whoever needs to hear it.
Right.
So I do believe that there are people listening to this who need to hear that because perhaps they've had something come through and they don't quite trust it. But my advice would be just trust it and see what happens.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, there you go.
I'm listening. Well, and Claire and I are friends, so we talk occasionally. And I obviously recovered Catholic, but that wasn't really a big deal in my house because my mom had some psychic abilities and she thought it was fun, and she would have dreams and she would always know, when a baby was coming or what gender it would be. And I have had similar dreams, but it's usually, the night before, or when someone's giving birth in the middle of the night, I'm dreaming it as it's happening. Or one of my dearest friends had a drug overdose and I dreamed of her being in trouble and, called her first thing and she was in the hospital. And just so things like that. And I'm one of those where I don't know if I can make it happen, right? So these things happen, but I don't have any control over it. So how do you suggest, if people want to develop their talents and they're like innate, right? You're saying everyone has it, which I absolutely believe, because as John and I have talked about a lot, we're all connected. So everything's connected. So we can all connect into that greater consciousness. And when you're first starting out, how do you suggest people really tap in and learn to trust? Because it's a learned trust, right?
Yeah. So first of all, awareness. So really honing that connection to your feelings. So meditation is perfect because you're sitting there and you're with yourself. And mindfulness meditation particularly will allow you to observe how you feel within your body, how you feel emotionally, what your thoughts are and where they're taking you. And when you become more aware, then you know what's you thinking, and then you become aware of the more subtle things that are coming in as you sit there. So my advice is always learn to be more mindful during your day and learn to meditate. That's the gateway to it all. And then when you start receiving what you think is information psychically or intuitively, make notes, write down and keep a note of what's coming through, and then see if you can, we don't try and make it fit, but it is a bit of a puzzle often when information comes through. It's not always very clear. And so, but see what comes through and see how it's relevant to you or to people around you.
Right. Well, trust is developed by results over time, and and sometimes it's often hard for us to trust ourselves, because we tend to beat ourselves up more than we would allow anybody to talk about themselves that way, right? So we always no, don't talk about yourself that way, but we'll beat the crap out of ourselves, right? And so sometimes it's hard to allow ourselves to have that kind of trust in self because of our own subconscious beliefs from our past experiences. So there's a point in your journey where, if I may be hearing this wrong, but you let me know, where you literally had to release that sort of doubt. And was there a pivotal moment that happened for you, or was that literally over time?
No, that's over time, and working with a development circle online where we would meet up regularly and read each other, or have a sitter come in that we would read for. And yes, you build up that trust over time because you see yourself getting relevant information, or you see your colleagues getting that wow moment where they say a name or they say something about the person, or a loved one of the person, and we all are witnessing that has come through. There was no way they could have known that, and so therefore we must trust. And but I think the other thing that has been an issue that we all needed to come to terms with was other people's opinions.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been That was interesting because I remember looking back now years ago, all talking about, have you come out of the psychic closet yet? And we were all so nervous to do that back then.
Mm-hmm.
We really cared what people thought and that they would judge us and think that we were weird. Or my husband, I mean, he did worry about me sincerely when I started doing all this. And it wasn't until, I mean, quite a long time later, but a friend of his had a reading from me and he came to the house. And when he left the room, he was in tears. I mean, good tears, the emotion had come out. And when my husband realized, wow, that's my mate, and he's clearly been moved by whatever has happened there.
Right.
That's when he started believing. And so that helped, obviously, having that support around me. He went from complete cynic to, oh my gosh, I think Claire has something here. So that also helps, having that community support.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious because, John and I are recovered Catholic. How did your religious upbringing, if you had a religious upbringing, play into your current spirituality, or how did that evolve for you?
Yeah, so I was brought up by a very loving, responsible family, and they had a bit of a connection to the church. We lived in a very small village in England. I was christened Church of England, went to Sunday school occasionally, went to the odd church service, maybe Easter time or Christmas. But really, my parents said that they would live as Christians, but they didn't want to be going to church all the time and following sermons and what have you. So then we moved up to Scotland. And when I was about 14 years old, I had this deep, deep feeling inside of me that there's more to life than what I was experiencing. And I couldn't explain that feeling. I didn't know what to do about it. So I thought, well, maybe church is the answer. So it kind of stuns me. But at 14, I took myself to church on my own. There was a Church of Scotland down the street. I told my parents and they said, that's great, you can represent us. Bye.
Thanks for proving we're good Christians.
And so I went and I listened to sermons and I was feeling, is this what I'm missing? What is it I'm missing? And then one day I went and apparently I sat in someone's regular pew and they weren't very pleased about it. And I thought, wow, this is just, the human side of things just really gets in the way.
Yeah.
And so I then went on a quest and I went to a Quaker church service and I went to various different ones around the city of Aberdeen where I was living. And then finally found that two older girls at our school, they were born again Christians, and did I want to go to church with them? So I did that. And we would meet at lunchtime at school and pray together. And we had sleepovers where they were saying, talk in tongues, Claire. It was full on. God is great, serious stuff. And I thought, well, it's exciting and it's nice to have this. So I kept going with it until one day when it all fell to bits. And that was because one of the girls said to me, she came to me, she goes, Claire, something amazing's happened. And I'm thinking, oh, great. She goes, yeah, God and all that stuff's good, but I've met a boy. And she said, basically she had her first very intimate experience, and she was blown away, and that was that. And seriously, it was complete breaking in.
That was her new God.
That was her new God.
Her new God, right.
And again, I thought this is
you
also...
You should see that altar now. It's crazy.
But it just made me realize that everything was so fickle, and it just really got to me. And I still had this inner feeling, there's more to life, but I don't know what it was. And it was unfortunate back then, no internet. Not a whole lot. If you wanted information, I'd go to the bookshelf and get the encyclopedia down. It was harder to discover things, and compared to today, certainly. But yeah, that was my ultimate feeling, was churches or religion, organized religion, is helpful in some ways, but it really isn't. It isn't the be all and end all. So spirituality for me is so free and so kind and so accepting and open and loving And that is, thank goodness I found it. Thank goodness, you know.
Right. I had the same kind of journey in the fact that when I limited myself to one religion, I found myself limited, and I found myself judging, and I found myself in a space of, well, you're not, so blah, blah, blah. Get the little head bob going on. Right? And the idea was that if God is love, as is my belief, that then judgment, it doesn't come into play, because that's not godly per se. And so for me, it was very interesting thing. I love the way you talk about your journey, because the word feelings come up all the time with you. You're constantly saying, I felt this way, I feel that way. And it's like your path has been following your feelings. And to me, I really do believe that is the way, the truth, and the life, like you were, right? I believe it is the way to find what you truly believe. I love getting into conversations with people who don't believe the way I do, because it lets me find what I really believe. And if I feel someone judging me or harshly thinking of me in a way that is detrimental to me because of the fact that they're limiting me in their beliefs, then I will move away from that person very quickly. Do you find the more spiritual you become, the more you have to, I don't want to use the word shield, but sort of move away from people who think the other way? Do you find yourself, leaving their life?
Yeah, definitely. It just doesn't feel good, in their company. It really doesn't. And but no judgment, but it's just moving on. Yeah. I mean, thankfully I haven't had to sever any relationships, but just, there've been friendships certainly where people will have said, I don't believe what you do. They'll say it straight to me, and I'm not here to convince you,
Right. Yeah, I haven't had to sever any either, just except for the ones who now bow at a different political altar than I do. We'll leave it at that. So Tamara, what do you think about this whole feeling concept and following the feeling pathway?
Oh, I love it. I love it because that's what I believe you do in your, that's how life works. When we follow what feels good, what feels right for us, and we're really tuned in to our journey, then it's all heart to me. So if we're following our brain, we're going to probably end up somewhere we don't need to be or don't want to be. And if we follow our heart, that to me is the voice of God, spirit, whatever, yada, yada, saying, yes, you're on the right track. Follow that feeling and go with that, because it will feel expansive and it will feel light and it will feel right. And so absolutely follow the feeling. I love it. I love it. I'm all about the passion.
So that said, when you first started hanging out or getting to Claire, how did she make you feel?
Well, this was a very different version of Claire and myself too when we first started hanging out. So we were together in basically an international women's choir, the American Women's Association choir. And then we did some small writing groups together and worked in the AWA office together. So we were both very tidy versions of ourselves, I would say. We kind of kept... we were expat wives, trailing spouses. And I don't feel like I really knew who Claire was. I liked her. She had lovely energy. She's beautiful. She's, inside and out. Like you can feel that when you're around her. And she was a good singer too. I like her voice. And just a very easy person to be around. So just your energy, Claire, is just like chill, and I'm all like, super high energy. Like I love having those friends that balance me and bring me back down to earth. And that's how Claire feels. And
thank you, Tamara. But certainly we were like an edited version of ourselves back then. Yeah. So we've discovered each of us so much more. I mean, like so much more, right, Tamara?
Yes.
Just life has
So,
opened up since
yes.
then.
I love the reference to edited version, the word edited, because that means you've taken something away from yourself. You know, and what I'm hearing from both of you right now is that you throw out the edits, you know, and you fully became authentic to who you truly are, because the edits you were making were really to please others.
Oh yeah, completely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so
It's how we're raised, right?
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Don't cause trouble.
And when you get into marriage situations, as Tamara knows, I'm known as Triple X because I have 3 of them. Right.
I only have one, and he was a doozy, so he'll probably stay the only one.
So he's just the big X, right?
Yeah.
He's a big something. Anyway, moving on. But I one of the one lesson I got out of my 3 marriages was that I was editing myself to be with them, and they didn't love me. They loved the edited version of myself. So you're very fortunate in the fact that your husband, Claire, was able to see past the edits, right? And say, oh, well, look at that. My mate over here just had a great, huge experience with my wife. What an amazing thing. And could
that
change
sounds really odd.
It does. Hang on. Oh, we have to change the rating of the podcast. my friend had a good time with my wife.
A spiritual experience.
And it wasn't. You didn't.
Hallelujah.
He came out crying tears of joy.
Well, there you go.
Gone in a totally different direction.
Claire, I have to tell you, Claire, I now officially love you.
Fits right into the Spirit Cafe.
I love a good comedy moment, man. That was the best. That was great. You make me feel good.
Oh, well, that's wonderful.
So Claire, what now that you've gone through all this and you've done all these things and you've made a great dirty joke on the show, can you where do you take all this stuff you've learned? What are you doing now? How are you manifesting it into the world?
So my intention is always that I have a good impression on people in whatever subtle way is needed by them. I really want people to be happy. So I love what Tamara does, because I believe in a very selfish way that when you're happy, you behave better, you make better choices, you have a more positive impact on everyone. So my desire is that I just do things that always, I'm not an angel, of course, but not perfect. But my intention is that I'm improving life around me and for the people that I meet. My current work is mostly with animals, and it's been fascinating connecting with animals on a psychic level, and then how it always or almost always comes back to the humans with the animals, and how it's all intertwined, how they're feeling and how they're behaving, and what impact they're having on each other in their relationships. So yeah, being able to be the messenger and aid communication and create deeper bonds for people with each other and with their animals is how I love my life right now.
So you consider yourself a messenger?
Yeah.
Okay, so the word messenger. Now here's my history lesson of the week. Thank you very much.
Good. We shouldn't go an episode without one.
Right. Angelus is the word that became angel, and angelus means messenger.
Oh, well, there we are.
So well done, angel. So well done, angel.
So I'm curious if you could share with us one of your favorite, pet psychic success stories.
Oh gosh. There's loads, but there's a cute one I read for a friend's mum's dog in England, and that dog said, when I referred to the mother, the dog said dog mum, and then my friend's dog in Houston has just been sent over because they're moving back to England. So my friend said to her dog, "Don't worry, you're in good hands. You're going to be with dog mum." And as soon as she said that, her dog sighed a sigh of relief, went to sleep, woke up the next day, got on the aeroplane and went off and hasn't left dog mum's side. And I mean, that's just a recent story that she told me that I thought was very sweet. But I've had incredible experiences with like end of life stories where the very first experience I had connecting with an animal was an end of life situation where somebody contacted me, said, could you do this? And I said, well, I'm not sure. I haven't connected with a living animal before. But she said, my dog is so sick. I think it's time to put him to sleep and I'm scared. Is there anything you could pick up for me? And so as soon as I tuned into that dog's energy, he said, I'm not going anywhere. And it turned out he drew attention to his ear, and it turned out that he had an inner ear infection that was able to be treated with medicine. The dog made a full recovery, lived for many years later, and that was my first experience. And I thought, wow, that's very powerful. That dog was going to be put to sleep, and he was going, no, it's not my time.
Wow.
And so being able to receive that information, pass it on, was amazing.
I have a really interesting question, and I don't know whether you get anything on this or not, but I had a dog who I raised from the time he was 2 weeks old. He ended up being a 110-pound Rottweiler. He was named Odin. He was the biggest lap dog in the world and the most gentle giant you'd ever see. And when I was on tour on doing USO shows, he ended up getting severe bone cancer, and they put him down while I was away.
Oh gosh.
But what happened was, and he was, I was very blessed. Rottweilers typically live 8-9 years, and he was 12. So I felt very blessed to have him for as long as I did. But I sometimes would have these weird dreams where, and I don't know whether it was because I wasn't there when he passed, but these dreams that I had were like, I go to someone's house and Odin is there. And I'm like, you've had Odin this whole time? And I bring Odin back to my house. He lives with me again. So, and I have that dream. I've had that dream many times, but is that Odin connecting, or is that just me because I've missed the moment, because I missed the moment of his passing?
Well, it's all tied up with your emotion for sure. But I mean, the fact that he keeps coming to you in dreams, keeps being with you, suggests to me that the message is he's with you. He's still with you.
He was.
I mean, that's difficult. That's a very difficult situation when you've had a dog that long and you haven't had that moment to say goodbye properly.
Yeah, I believe I was in Norway when he was put down, and it was devastating because I literally carried him in a pocket when I first got him, and I bottle fed him. Yeah, I bottle fed him because his mom, it was bad breeder. His mom was gotten to at too young of an age for the puppies to have papers, and so the breeder just gave them out willy-nilly to anybody. And I got him at 2 weeks old, and literally had to bottle feed and bring him back. And yeah, he was my boy, man. He was my son before I had a son. I love the fact that you talk about the animals. You hear them talking to you, and going to dog mom, right? And when my son was born, before my son was born, my wife and I would have an argument about whether it was a boy or a girl, and I one time took the second to say, well, are you a boy or a girl? And I got the personality and everything smacked in my face. Of course I'm a boy.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So I turned to her, I said, no, he just told me he's a boy, right? And I just took it as truth. And boy, did I get the boy.
Okay.
All 6'4" of them at 17 years old.
Wow.
So I love the idea of hearing that person, that animal, that thing on the other side. So when you hear it, and I always talk about it, it's like hearing a thought. What is your experience?
Yes, it can feel like hearing a thought. It's often for me in my own voice, but it has the personality of someone else or something else. And so it's just years of practice to decipher what's me and what's this other being. But sometimes I'll get, well, not with animals so much, but with humans, I'll sometimes get an accent. But yeah, it's often, it does feel, well, it's not a thought, and I know it's not a thought, but yes, that's quite a fun way of describing it to help people understand how it's received. Yeah.
Well, yeah, to me, it feels like I'm hearing somebody else's thought.
Okay.
That's the way it's like I'm hearing somebody else's thought, but it's not like I'm hearing an auditory voice. Now, I've had those moments, and have you had the moments where you've heard your name called?
No, not really, actually.
Oh, I have totally been in a room and heard John and looked over my shoulder, and like, what the hell? You know, I've had that moment quite a lot. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
No, I tend to have maybe someone else's name, or but most of the time I'm specifically sitting down to do my work, so I will say, right, I'm opening myself up and I'm ready to communicate.
Boy, I guess that's what I need to learn, is how to compartmentalize the time, and hey, you're not allowed to talk to me during work hours. Because those guys talk to me all the time.
Oh, okay, yeah, I think part of it is important to set boundaries. Yeah.
Yes. Have you ever had things come up unexpectedly when you were in a situation where it wasn't very welcome?
I had a message come through with somebody I didn't know very well when I was having lunch with them, and I thought, oh gosh, and it wasn't, I didn't say anything at the time, and because it didn't feel appropriate. And also I was taught, don't do the Teresa Caputo type thing where you just go, hey, is your mother, did she wear a purple wig? It's like, no, don't do that.
Did you just do an accent? I love it. Okay.
But when I'm driving, there was one time I was doing a course up in a place called Old Town Spring, north of Houston, and I was driving, and I hadn't cut the connection, and I just felt like I had to speak to my teacher the next day. She said, you had to ground yourself, start saying the alphabet, start doing times tables, do anything to get out of the psychic field. Just ground yourself so that you can get back to normal activities safely.
Okay. So you set a specific container. Okay, I'm opening to whatever, and then you close it at the end of a reading session. Okay. I have a question about the pets, since, John, you started talking about your dog who you weren't able to be with at the end, and it made me think of lost pets. So have you worked with any lost pets, or pets who just disappeared and the owner didn't know what happened and wanted closure?
Yes. Yeah. But that one's a difficult one because, there's not so much validation possible. I mean, I do connect with animals that are lost to see how they're feeling. I don't guarantee to get any back in touch, although I would love to be able to do that. That would be incredible. But I can say, what are their surroundings? How are they feeling? How are they physically? Why did they leave? The last one I did was a dog out in the hill country. It was very sad because one of the images I got was there was a group of people down at the bottom of a hill, and he ran away from them. And that turned out to be one of the groups of people that spotted him a few days after he'd gone missing. And it's heartbreaking. So I don't advertise that I do that, but I can help if somebody really needs some sort of reassurance or any information whatsoever, then I can help with that.
That's very interesting. It's just, it's such an exciting area because we don't hear of pet psychics very often. So you're unique in the field, right?
There's a few of us, but yeah, I mean, it's fascinating work, and I do love it. The personalities that our animals have is so varied, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah. It can be very deep, but it can be a lot of fun.
It's really interesting. I find that animals typically are more unconditionally loving than people can be, because we get into our own junk. And I, unlike Tamara, I know actually 3 or 4 animal psychics, and I actually know an animal Reiki healer who does distance.
Yeah, I do that too.
Which is awesome.
Attuned.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. So I'm able to help. Like there was a a pug having seizures in California, I was able to send Reiki and the dog calmed down. I mean, it's amazing what we're able to do when we connect.
Right.
It's all
Yeah,
about
because
communication and connection.
so Reiki over distance to an animal, you must not believe in the distance.
It's irrelevant.
Right.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant, exactly, because it's all part of the same energy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I think for somebody like myself who's traveled all over the world and had to live, make a new life in all these different countries where you start off very alone, the idea when I discovered my spiritual side, I thought, wow, all those times I thought I was by myself and I was never alone. And so that for me is a huge comfort. Even today, every day I know, even if I'm alone, I'm not actually alone. We all have a support network around us. Even if we don't see it or hear it, obviously, it's there for us. So I encourage everyone to ask, say, I need help. Can you be with me? Let me feel you. Make use of it because, we each have our own team supporting us.
Great.
Love it. Love it.
Well,
Any other deep questions, John?
Well, actually, what I would like to know is how do people get a hold of you, and how do people reach out to you to help with their animals or with their other businesses and services you do?
Thank you. Well, I'm most active on Instagram at pet_psychic_Claire. And I have a website, which is www.clairerad.com.
Great. And I'll put that all in the show notes. So that'll be all down there for people to be able to reach out to you. Claire, this has been really, really very fun and enlightening. It's always nice to not have to talk to Tamara so much.
Thanks, John.
Ouch.
She knows I'm joking. Or am I? Anyway,
No. We love you, Tamara.
Thank you, Claire.
Yeah. This has been wonderful. I love hearing other people's journeys and other people's perspectives, and I think it's pretty spectacular. Tamara, you want to take us out of this thing?
Sure thing. I want to thank you, Claire, for being open to this experiencing, for letting us probe your mind and listen to your stories. It's always a joy to be with you, and I hope that the listeners also love your stories and your energy the way that I do. And speaking of listeners, we want to thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a review, give us a like, visit us on Facebook, and chat us up. We want to hear about your stories too. Do you have any psychic stories that you want to share? And as always, thank you, John, for being our comedic relief. And
with a face like this, how could I not be the comedy relief?
Visit us on YouTube if you want to see that face and that shiny bald head. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us at Spirit Cafe, a place where you can safely explore your spirituality without the guilt or dogma of religion. Leave all comments and suggestions on the Spirit Cafe podcast Facebook page.